Hello, welcome back to a quick episode of the Friends of Sinn Féin podcast. Today's episode is something like a rapid response, a quick update to the latest political developments, what we need to be paying attention to, and what's been going on lately. Thank you so much for taking the time to provide us with this update here. And there are so many parts and pieces moving, it can be tough at times to know how to follow a through line of a story or what's going on and what we can expect. Can you provide us a snapshot of what's been happening lately in the past couple of days?
Yeah, Greg, it's great to be here and have the opportunity to talk to everybody in the US. And I have to say as well, the people in Canada who tune in. Myself and John Finucane were in Canada last week.
Yeah.
And it's we had a running joke that every time we went in to do a political briefing, we had to check our phones to find out what was happening in London, that things were moving that quickly. So this week we now have a new British Prime Minister who's promising stability, who's promising change, but he's surrounded himself in a cabinet which looks very like the cabinets that have gone before. And there's no identifiable change in British government policy on the issues affecting Ireland. So he's going to continue on with his Brexit Protocol, which will allow them to overwrite their agreement with the EU. They're committed to bringing forward their legislation, which is currently in the House of Lords, on legacy, which would mean stopping families having access to courts, stopping inquests, stopping judicial investigations, and all of which it runs counter to the commitments in the Good Friday Agreement, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the Stormont House Agreement. So we have a change in face, but we don't have a change in policy, and that's very worrying.
Yeah, it's that consistent stance on Brexit and legacy. The more things change, the more things stay the same. It's all anchored in the Good Friday Agreement that has been agreed, that has been determined, and there is a path forward. What do you think we can expect in the coming days? What is on the horizon?
Well, today is a crucial day in terms of the North. The institutions, as you know, have been down for the past 6 months. The DUP have refused to honour the election results in May, which returned a majority in favour of getting on with the work, establishing a government, looking at the protocol. It also returned Sinn Féin as the largest party and Michelle O'Neill as the first minister-elect, a historic achievement in the history of the state. And the DUP have set all that aside for the past 6 months and blocked the establishment of government. The clock runs out at midnight tonight. If government hasn't been set up by then, we will move into an election, and we will have an election within the next 12 weeks. The favourite date, or the speculative date for an election, is the 15th of December. All of this has been caused by the DUP refusing to abide by the mandate of the people, by the vote of the people in May, and all could be avoided in the middle of a cost of living crisis where families are struggling to heat their homes and put food on their table. The DUP have blocked government in the North and forced an election.
Yeah, this isn't a theoretical political would you or wouldn't you. This is having an impact on the daily lives of people for the last 6 months, a refusal to establish the necessary departments and processing of paperwork and the things we rely on for governments to take care of.
Absolutely. So in the North, there's been a caretaker government, if you like, in place with a rollover from the old ministers, but they can't do anything new and they can't bring forward any new proposals and can't bring forward a budget. So there's approximately a $250 million, 250 million sterling sitting in an account which could be distributed to help families struggling with this current cost of living crisis, help businesses with their financial costs and the cost of fuel. And that can't be distributed because government has been blocked. And also then we haven't been able to progress the other issues that are outstanding in terms of the Good Friday Agreement, in terms of North-South institutions meeting, in terms of East-West institutions meeting, and the Assembly itself meeting.
So if it's okay to tease out a little more clarity, the deadline is midnight tonight. If the DUP recognizes the role that an active government plays in their own role in stymieing that progress and says, okay, yeah, we will sit, then we will not have an election in December. And we could see the current bodies take their seats and government can get back. And if they do not do that, it triggers an election. Is that well understood?
That's 100%. And actually, just at the time of recording this, and I know it'll be a different time that goes out. So the Sinn Féin and the other parties called the Assembly together this afternoon. to elect a speaker and to elect a first and deputy first minister, which would then bring together a government. The DUP voted against that, so it crashed. So they have blocked it again today, and there will be no time to get that reconvened and the government up and running before midnight tonight. So the British government have told us they're committed legally and politically to having an election. That's the rules.
Yeah.
You have 6 months to set a government. If there's no government, then there has to be an election.
In the time between now and December 15th, what is going to be happening to the day-to-day operations of the government?
Well, that's handed completely over to civil servants. The caretaker ministers that had been in place are now stood down, so that there's no democratic accountability in terms of government spend, and there's a limit to what those civil servants can actually do in the absence of having an agreed government. What should also happen in the meantime, because the election will run out now, Sinn Féin have no fear of it, and we believe that we will consolidate our position as the largest party, but also the negotiations with the EU and Britain to resolve the issues about the implementation of the Brexit Protocol should continue. And they should be resolved because the issues are quite straightforward. Those issues should be resolved in time for the election and the appointment of a new government. So all of that work will continue. Sinn Féin will continue to be active on our issues, continue to be active on the election campaign, and we will need some support from the US in that as well, of course. And also, we will continue to campaign because the Brexit Protocol in Westminster and the House of Lords will continue to roll out, and their terrible piece of legislation on legacy, as it says, which would block the rights of citizens to investigations and access to courts, will continue, and we will continue to advocate against that, and we will stand with those who are in favour of the agreements.
Yeah, it is so much to try to take in. It's a grinding of the gears of the actual machinations of what it takes to create new legislation and support people, and it's also just a complete dismissal of the will of the people. The elections stand for themselves. The people have voted and seek exactly this means of representation and action, and it's quite difficult to understand how it all plays out. So I appreciate very much the detail.
And I think that's a crucial thing to reflect on. There was an election 6 months ago, and the people voted, and they voted to get on with government, and they voted to get on with the protocol, and that has been blocked. But also this, through all of that period, the British government have continued with their unilateral approach. So they have blocked the protocol. They have raised these issues, and that is against the will of the majority of the people in the North. They have also continued with this cover-up proposals on legacy, which is objected to not just by Sinn Féin, but by all political parties across the North. It's one of the things that unite the parties in the North. The Irish government, the European Commission, the Commission on Human Rights, and even this week that there was a report from the House of Commons Human Rights Committee which called for the legislation to be scrapped. So not only are the DUP refusing to respect the mandate of May, the British government are continuing with their unilateral actions against the will of the people and counter to what had previously been agreed in Good Friday and St Andrews and in Stormont House.
So if elections, it sounds as though, based on how the clock is running, there will be at least an option that elections will be called for December. What then happens regarding any sort of change of guarantee of avoiding this scenario again?
Well, that's the really interesting question, because what has happened is the DUP have said that they will continue with their protest and will continue to block the establishment of a government unless the issues of the Brexit Protocol are resolved to their satisfaction. By the way, it was also a line that was repeated by the British Minister, Steve Barker, who said that there would be no 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement unless the unionist demands were met. And that's why I'm saying there's been no change in policy by this British government. But that is not the way forward. You cannot have stalled and blocked institutions running counter to the Good Friday Agreement. So both the Taoiseach and the Sinn Féin president and some of the other parties were saying that the default is not back to London control. The default will be a new partnership between the Irish and British government if the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement can't be set up. Remember, the institutions are only one part of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
So the unionists might want to block
One.
the operation of the assembly,
Yeah.
but they can't block the operation of the overall architecture, including the unity referendum proposals in the Good Friday Agreement.
So you alluded to it earlier, and it's really such an important part of why we're tuning in and why we've asked for some of your time. What role can we play here in the States and in Canada, North America, to say, this is of vital importance to us, and this is how we can make sure that we're being loud and clear about that?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge the role that President Biden played this week. When his first call with Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, he raised a number of issues: the Ukraine, the energy crisis, the need for solidarity on these issues, but also fundamentally raised that the British government need to honour their obligations and find a resolution to the protocol issue in a negotiated way with the EU. And the same when we were in Canada last week was the position of the parliamentarians who we met there. So I think both the US and Canada have a very pointed role to play as a critical friend to this British government of saying, the reality internationally is you need to respect international law and honour your agreements and find a resolution to this. So I think there's a political way forward. We also have a very practical way forward, is that Irish American activists and Canadian activists should be bringing pressure to bear on their governments to act in that fashion. And I will also say we are in for a very testing time, and we will require all of our support as we face into a number of elections, north and south.
Thank you for that. That is clear. And on our website and on our social media bios, there is a link to a form people can find out if their congressperson is a member of the Friends of Ireland caucus, as well as other ways to make contact and raise awareness and pressure around these important issues. Thank you very much, Ciarán, for taking the time to explain what's been happening these past 48 hours, and good luck in the coming 48 to 72. It's going to be a busy one.
Yeah, it's going to be busy, but again, and we face these crises and challenges, but the direction of travel is very clear. It's Irish unity, and it's international endorsement of and protection of the Good Friday Agreement is the only way forward.
That's it. Eyes on the prize, and keep working. Thank you, Ciarán. Appreciate it, and we'll talk again, and we'll do a deeper analysis and conversation later next week. Thank you.
Okay, Greg. Thank you.